Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Kurotsuchi and Kotetsu stuck on a different planet, and met Naruto, and fell in love with him, part 1. So before we start, please go check out the author of this fanfic, Alchemist19, link is in the description, also subscribe to our channel, and like this video. So let's begin the video. The sun rose high above the Soul Society. Everyone was going about their daily business. The Shinigami watched over this spiritual world, protecting them from within the Suraitai. They were broken up into 13 guard squads that made up the Shinigami forces. It had been a year since Ichigo Kurosaki defeated Sosuke Aizen in battle, and lost his Shinigami powers. Everyone was grateful for his help with that incident, but life had returned to normal. One person was walking silently toward the barrack of Squad 12. She wore a short, form-fitting kimono, with a white nagajugan underneath. Wrapped around her waist was a white obi, fastened with a red cord. She had piercing green eyes, and silk-like black hair that was tied in a braid. This was Eene Kurotsuchi, lieutenant of Squad 12. She was on her way to see her father/creator Mayuri Kurotsuchi, the captain of Squad 12. He had sent a hell butterfly to her, ordering her to come to the lab as soon as possible. She walked at a quick pace, hoping to get there soon, to avoid her father's anger. As she walked, she didn't notice someone turn the corner until she ran into them. Both fell hard to the ground, and Nemu was the first to look up. She looked, and saw that it was the lieutenant of Squad 4, Issane Kotetsu. Issane was a tall woman with gray eyes, silver hair, and 2 small braids on her right side. She wore the standard Shinigami uniform, and was slowly getting up off the floor. "I'm sorry, Nemu," Issane said, and helped the other girl up. "Captain Unohana needed me, as quickly as possible, and I wasn't watching where I was going." Nemu looked at Issane, and nodded. "I understand, I too am in a hurry to see my captain." Issane nodded, and went on her way. "I'll see you later," she called, and disappeared around a corner. Nemu watched this, and sighed, again heading toward her barracks, and an angry captain. It was a beautiful day in Konohagakure, the village hidden in the leaves. It had been 3 years since the end of the 4th Great Shinobi War, and the village was thriving. They had defeated Madara Uchiha and his armies, restoring peace to the land, but it was not a lasting peace. Soon all the villages were once again at fighting each other. This was the current dilemma of the Godame Hokage, Tswanda Senju, was facing. She looked at the stack of paperwork before her, and cried inwardly, "Why do I have to do this?" She thought to herself, as she continued to work. To her, every time she seemed to finish one stack, another one would suddenly appear to take its place. She was going insane. She missed her carefree life of gambling and drinking, but alas, she had a job to do. Yet this didn't stop her from sneaking a quick glance at her secret stash of sake in one of her desk drawers. She looked around, quickly making sure the cost was clear, opened the cabinet, and pulled out a bottle. She smiled to herself, as she poured herself a glass. Suddenly a large orange and yellow blur came through the window, causing Tsunade to spill her sake. "My sake!" she cried, as she looked down at the spilt drink. She looked up at the person who had burst through her window. Standing in front of her was a tall man, about 6 feet 2 inches, with long spiky blonde hair tied in a ponytail. He was wearing a black shirt, with a jonin vest over it. He had black pants with orange strips down the sides. His coat had orange flames at the bottom, and the kanji for fox on the back. He had dark blue eyes with 3 whiskers-like marks on his cheeks, making him look feral. This was Naruto Uzumaki, the hero of the war, and Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Yoko. "Hi Bachan," he said cheerfully. Tsunade looked at her son with a sigh. She got up, and punched him across the room. "What have I told you about that?" she yelled at him. "I said call me Ka-san." "Sorry Ka-san," he said, as he limped over to her. "I just couldn't resist." "Sure you couldn't," she chided him, and gave him a motherly smile. "So what brings you here today?" Naruto gave her a big smile, and said, "I was bored, and was wondering if you had any missions I could do." Tsunade knew there was something up. Naruto was asking to do work. Mostly he would try to worm his way out of D or C rank missions, which was all she had. You want to do a mission? Does it matter what rank? She asked, hoping to get more information out of him. Not really, he said with a smile. What happened? She asked him bluntly. What are you talking about? He said, trying to get her off the subject. You never want to do low-ranking missions, she said, making him mentally slap himself. So, you are either really bored, or you did something you want to get away from, and I have a feeling it's the second one. Naruto looked at his adoptive mother, and sighed. Can't get anything past you, can I? He said with a sigh. Pretty much, she said with a smile. So spill. Naruto looked at her, and sighed. Well, I kind of ruined Sasuke and Sakura's date, while I was training, by accidentally destroying the restaurant they were in. That's why you're trying to get a mission, she said, thinking he was just being paranoid. This is Sakura we're talking about, Naruto said, starting to get scared. She has been waiting to go on a date with Sasuke for years, and I ruined it. Tsunade got the picture, and knew he was as good as dead. She gave him a smile, and started to look at the mission scrolls. Let's see what we can find. Nemu stepped into the lab, stood by the monitors, and watched as her father worked around a new machine he had made. He turned, and saw her standing there. There you are, you stupid girl. He walked over to her, and slapped her across the face. You are supposed to be here, as soon as I call you. Is that clear? Yes, father, she said, looking at the ground. She hated when she made him mad. It seemed like everything she did was not good enough. Mayuri looked at his daughter. Let's get on with it, leading her toward the machine he was operating earlier. Nina followed, and wondered what he was going to show her. As they reached the machine, she noticed that it was large with many tubes coming from it. It had a large screen that showed a forest. What is this? She asked, as she looked at the machine. This, my failed experiment, is a window into a world that we have never seen, he explained with pride. You mean there is a world we don't know about? She said with shock. It has been said that there were only the 3 worlds, and now with this discovery, it shattered that notion completely. Mayuri looked at Nimi's shocked face, and smiled. Yes, with this we can view this other world, and see what has been going on. Just think of the test subjects, and other things we can learn from that world. Nimi just nodded, and watched her father rant about this discovery. She wondered if this world had people on it, or was it inhabited by something that was a threat to the Soul Society. Have you reported this to the head captain? She asked quietly. Why would I report this to that buffoon? Mayuri stated obviously. Nina thought for a moment before answering. He could authorize an expedition to that world, she suggested. Mayuri looked at her, and slapped her across the face. Why didn't you mention this earlier, you stupid girl? I'm sorry, she said, focusing on the ground once again. Don't dwell on it, you idiot, he said. Go send a message so I can get my work done. Yes, father, she said, and headed out the room. Later in captain meeting. So, I feel it would be very informative if we sent a team to this world, and see what they have to offer us, Mayuri stated to the other captains, hoping they would approve of the plan. So you're telling us, there is another world we have no knowledge of, and you want to go and explore it? Said Toshiro Hitsugaya, captain of Squad 10. Exactly, Mayuri stated. Are you out of your mind? Hitsugaya said angrily. We are still recovering from the war, and you want us to waste precious manpower to visit a world that might be hostile to us. But wouldn't it be a good idea for us to learn about this world, so we can be prepared if they ever attack? Said Retsu Unhana, captain of Squad 4. It is always best to know your enemy. Soon a huge argument broke out between the captains. Some wanted to explore this new place while others wanted to leave it alone. Head Captain Yamamoto looked at the bickering captains, and slammed his cane down, causing everyone to go silent. Enough of this foolishness, he stated. I have to agree with Captain Kurotsuchi. I think it would be in the best interest of the Soul Society to learn of this new place, and to see if hollows are there, as well. Mayuri smiled, and was about to speak, when he was cut off by the head captain. But we will be sending only a pair, so as not to waste any forces. They must be, at least, lieutenants. I will send Nimue, Mayuri stated, as if it was the easiest answer. She knows what information to gather, and she can get it quickly. Many of the other captains were nervous about sending their lieutenants to this new world. Mayuri knew if no one stepped up, they would go. I will send Ine, Captain Urahara said finally, much to the surprise of the other captains. Retsu, are you sure that is wise? Asked Jushiro Yukitake, captain of Squad 13. Yes, it is best to have a healer in the group, in case things turn hostile, Urahara stated. Everyone nodded in agreement. So, it is settled then, Captain Yamamoto said. Lieutenants, Ine Kotetsu, and Nimi Kurotsuchi, will travel to this new world, and gather intel on its inhabitants, and hollow activity. Dismissed, Naruto looked at the mission scroll, and sighed. It was a simple bandit raid mission. He was to head to a town on the edge of the Land of Fire, near the border of the Land of Winds. They were having trouble with a large group of bandits stealing their food, and taking their women as slaves. Naruto knew it was just a C rank. He wished she had at least a B ranked mission, but then again, beggars can't be choosers. As he approached the village, he heard someone scream. He picked up the pace, and raced toward the village. As it came into view, he saw the bandits raiding. He quickly pulled out a 3-pronged kunai, and threw it into the middle of the village. As soon as the kunai landed, he disappeared in a yellow flash. A bandit was having the time of his life. They were raiding the village again, and he was about to get the one girl he had had his eye on since they had first arrived. As he was about to have his fun, he watched, as a strange-looking kunai fell out of the sky, and hit the ground. He stared at it for a moment, when suddenly a yellow flash appeared. He suddenly felt a blade of cold steel go into his body. The young girl looked up, and saw a tall man with long spiked blonde hair standing over her. He put his fingers to his mouth telling her to stay quiet, and then pointed toward one of the houses where she could hide. She smiled, and nodded, quickly running to the house. Naruto watched, and made sure she was at the house before disappearing in a yellow flash. Soon, the cries of dying bandits filled the air, as Naruto hunted them down, slaying them mercilessly. Soon only one bandit remained. He looked all around for the attacker, but saw nothing. Show yourself, he shouted, his legs trembling. He soon heard a laugh fill the air. I am everywhere, the voice said, causing the bandit to shake with fear. I'm not scared of you, he stammered, only to hear the laugh again. You will be, it said, as he felt a blade against his neck. So now, what can you tell me about the other bandits? Naruto asked. Nimue and Ine stood next to each other with their things packed. They were nervously waiting on Mayuri to open a portal to this new world. They wondered what was on the other side, and what type of people or things lived there. So, Nimue, are you ready for this? Ine asked with a nervous smile. I am, she said flatly, not wanting to look weak in front of her father. I will explore, as ordered. Yeah, Ine said, and turned to watch Mayuri work. Mayuri was standing in front of the viewing machine before turning toward the two girls. We are almost ready, he stated, handing them 2 modified lieutenant's badges. These will be your homing signals in case something goes wrong. Just put some research into them, and we will hone in on your positions. Both girls nodded, and he continued. You need to first find a settlement, and observe the people. Next, find out if they have any type of powers at all, and lastly, see if there is any hollow activity there. Yes, Captain, they said in unison, and Mayuri smiled. Now let's get this show on the road, he stated, pressing a button that started the machine. Soon, a loud sound filled the room. A Senkuman, with black and white doors, opened up for them. I wish you good research, he said, as he watched the girls enter the door. The trip through the Senkuman was different, to say the least. Once they stepped through, they found themselves surrounded by trees. Nimue looked around, and saw the sun bearing down on them. Ine looked, and saw, running around, many animals that she recognized. Let's get moving, Nimue commanded, leading the way. Ine followed, and soon they found a road. Well, this is convenient, Ine muttered. Nimue nodded in agreement. This makes things easier, she said to Ine, as they headed down the road. Soon a town came into view, and they observed many humans walking around. They then noticed that many of the people were looking at them, as well. Is it just me, or do they see us? Ine said to her companion. It seems that way, Nimue replied. But let's test that theory. They walked toward one of the street vendors, and waited to see if the vendor responded. He looked at them with a smile. "What can I get you this fine day, ladies?" he greeted. "You can see us?" Nemia asked. The vendor looked at them, as if they were crazy. "Of course, who won't notice two pretty glasses?" he said with a confused look on his face. He quickly grabbed Isane's hand and pulled her toward the stall. "Let me show my fine items." Isane looked at Nemu and whispered in horror. "He can touch me." Nemu nodded slowly and turned toward the vendor. "I'm sorry, but we have to go," she said, pulling Insane away. As they walked, they noticed that they literally bumped into everyone they passed. "What's going on?" Isane whispered, as they walked out of town. Nemu thought for a moment before deciding. "It appears that we are just like the living in this world." "So it seems," Isane said with a look of surprise on her face. Nemu noted this phenomenon in her notebook. "So, what do we do?" Isane asked. "We just have to adjust our way of doing things," Nemu said, standing up. "How do we do that?" Isane said with confusion. "We act like everyone else," Nemu stated matter-of-factly, and walked down the road. Isane nodded, as they continued on their way. As night set in, they made camp in a clearing in the forest. As they prepared for the night, they noticed it was quiet, too quiet. "This is creepy," Isane said, looking around the forest. Nemu looked around, and agreed. "Yes, it is," she said. "Maybe it's because there is a lot of hollow activity at night." "I don't think so," Isane replied. "I don't feel any hollows near at all." "We will have to verify this," Nemu decided, getting up. "I shall scout around, and see what I can find." "I don't think that is a good idea," Isane stated, feeling a presence around her. "It's fine, I won't be gone long," Nemu assured her, and disappeared into the trees. As Nemu walked, she tried to feel any hollowness, but couldn't. She did feel a weird sort of energy, but she couldn't fully comprehend it. She stopped, and extended her senses only to be grabbed from behind, and quickly knocked out. Isane noticed that Nemu's spiritual pressure had suddenly dipped. She quickly stood up, pulled out and waited, her senses heightened. As she listened, she felt a tremor from underneath. She tried to get away, only to have a pair of hands grab her and pull her under. Naruto jumped from tree to tree, heading toward the bandits' camp. The bandit he had captured, and silence told him that a group of missing nin from Kumo led the group. They were C-ranked missing nin. Naruto sighed. He was hoping for at least someone who would give him a decent fight. As he spotted the camp, he formed a cross-shaped hand seal, and said Kagebushin no. Soon 5 clones stood next to him. He ordered them to scout the perimeter, and find out if they had any prisoners. He soon received the clones' memories, and knew that they had a cage of women near the west side of camp. He also learned that the missing nin had brought in 2 more. They were taken to a tent in the middle of camp. He knew he had to save them before anything bad happened. "Let's do this," he said, and faded into the night. Isane started to awaken, and felt a cold draft against her skin. As she opened her eyes, she noticed that she was almost naked. She had been stripped to her underwear, and found herself tied to a pole. Next to her was Nemu in her black panties and bra. She looked around, and saw that their things were in a pile in the corner. The flap of their shelter suddenly opened to reveal 2 men with strange symbols on their foreheads. To her it looked like a pair of clouds, but there was a line through them. "Looks like one is awake," said a short, green-haired man of average height. "Who are you?" Isane said, as she struggled against her bonds. "I am your new master," the shorter man said with a smile. "Now be a good girl, and it won't hurt much." Isane tried to undo her bonds, but they were too tight. "I am going to die here," she thought. Suddenly the sound of people dying filled the air. A bandit ran in, and shouted, "We're under attack!" only to dash outside again. The 2 men looked at each other, and the taller one said, "Go check it out." His partner nodded, and left to obey his orders. The other one looked at Isane, and said, "Where were we?" walking closer to her. Naruto was taking out the bandits, as quickly as possible. He had created over 50 clones, and had them attack the camp all at once. He assigned a group of clones to free the girls from the cages, and lead them to safety. As he fought, he felt the memories of one of his clones enter his mind. One of the missing nin was out, and ready to fight. Naruto headed toward the middle of the camp, and landed in front of the man. So, you're the one who attacked our camp, the nun said with anger. Yep, that's me, Naruto said with a smile. Fine, I'll just kill you, and go back to having my fun, the nun said, and went through a few hand signs, Doton, mud dragon jutsu. A large dragon came from the ground, and headed toward Naruto. Naruto dodged to the side, and went through his own set of hand signs, Futon, air bullets. He sent 5 large balls of compressed air at his target. The missing Nin eyes widened, and he flashed a set of hand signs, Doton earth wall. A wall of earth came up from the group, and blocked the wind. Naruto ran toward him, and climbed up the wall. He jumped off the top, a ball of blue energy forming in his hand, Rasengan. Naruto thrust his hand forward, and caught his target in the head. As Naruto landed, nothing was left of the missing Nin. One down, and one to go, Naruto said, and headed toward the tent where the 2 girls were being held. Aisane watched in fear, as the man came toward her. She tried to get away, but she was trapped. As he was about to grab her, a blade suddenly burst through his heart. Aisane watched in horror, as the man dropped to the ground, dead. She turned to discover the identity of her victor. Standing in front of her was a tall man with long blonde hair. He was wearing a headband like the others, but it was decorated with a different symbol. Are you okay? He asked, reaching for her hand. Aisane, unsure of his intentions, tried to move away. He noticed this and stopped. I am not going to hurt you, he said. Holding his hands up, Aisane looked at him, and slowly nodded. He came toward her, and untied her bonds. As her arms fell from the poles, she pulled them close to her body. She was so scared, if he hadn't come, that man would have had his way with her. She shivered, and started to cry, only to find something wrapped around her shoulders. She looked up, and saw that the man had taken off his jacket, and put it around her. He left her, went over to Nimue, and untied her. Since she was still unconscious, he held her gently in his arms. Aisane slowly stood up, and walked toward him. Thank you, she said, as he slowly set down Nimue. It's not a problem, he said with a smile. Just doing my job. Let's get out of here, he said, scooping up Nimue in his arms, and heading out of the tent. Aisane nodded, and started to follow, only to return to grab there. She didn't notice that she had left the modified badges in the tent. Nimue slowly opened her eyes, and looked around. She noticed that she was in a bed, and that she was not fully clothed. She sat up, held the blanket to her, and looked around to see where she was. The door opened. She tensed, only to see Aisane walk in, a bowl of food in hand. She was wearing a black t-shirt that seemed to hug her form, with a pair of white capri pants. Oh good, you're awake, she said with a smile. Where are we? Nimue asked, looking around the room. We are currently in an inn, Aisane said, as she set down the bowl of food on a nightstand. We were attacked 2 nights ago, and you've been out cold. Then how are we here? Nimue asked, afraid of the answer. I will be the one to answer that, said a voice by the door. Nimue turned to see a blonde-haired man standing by the door. Naruto Uzumaki, at your service. What happened? Nimue asked. Aisane proceeded to explain what had happened. Nimue listened, and became extremely grateful for what Naruto had done for them. She turned to Aisane, and questioned, Where are our things? I was only able to grab ours, Aisane admitted. I couldn't get the badges. Nimue looked, with shock, at Aisane. They were stuck. Without those badges, they couldn't get home. Naruto noticed this, and saw that they were in trouble. Hey, it's okay. You guys can come with me to Konoha, he said with a smile. Konoha? Nimue said with a questioning look. Yeah, it's my home, he said. I think we can help you try to get home. Nimue knew that they weren't going to be able to get home by themselves. Fine, okay, Nimue said. Great, Naruto said with a smile. Well, I'll leave you 2 alone. If you need me, I'll be in the next room. Do you think we can trust him? Nimue said, looking at her partner. Aisane looked at Nimue, and nodded. He saved us when he could have had our way with us, but he didn't. So I think we should trust him. Fine, we will trust him for now, Nimue said, and proceeded to eat the food on the table. Also, can you help me find some clothes? Naruto, Nimue, and Aisane walked up the road, and soon came upon the large gates of Konoha. Nimue, and Aisane looked at the gates in awe. They had never seen anything like it. As they approached the gates, they noticed that many people were staring at them. Why are they staring? Nimue whispered to Aisane. Aisane just shrugged. They then stopped at the front gate, and saw the 2 gate guards coming toward them. Welcome to Konoha, said one of the gate guards to the group. He then noticed that Naruto was one of the trio. Hey Naruto, how have you been? Hey Izumo, Naruto said with a smile. I've been good, just got done with a mission. Nice, Izumo replied with a smile, and looked at Nimue and Aisane. And who are these 2 lovely ladies? Aisane blushed, and Nimue looked at Izumo with confusion. Naruto smiled, and began the introductions. This is Nimue and Aisane. I helped them out while on my mission. I am taking them to see the Tsunade-ka and to see if we can help them get home. That's our Naruto, said Izumo, patting him on the back. He pulled out a clipboard, and had them write down their names. After everything was said and done, Izumo smiled. Enjoy your stay in Konoha. Naruto waved bye to Izumo, and began to walk again with the girls following close behind. Aisane looked around the village in awe. It was huge. She looked up, and saw 5 faces coming out of the side of the cliff. I wonder who they are, she thought to herself, as they walked. Nimue watched, as people with the same headband as Naruto ran around the village. It seemed that everyone who wore it was part of some group, and this group seemed to be fairly large. She also saw many of them who would wave or stop to say hi to Naruto, meaning he was respected. Soon a large tower came into sight, causing Nimue's curiosity to peak. Let's go see Ka-san, Naruto said, and lead them up to the top of the tower. As they approached a large set of doors, a girl with short black hair, wearing a black-blue kimono, looked up to see them walking toward her. She jumped up and ran over to Naruto, giving him a bear hug. I miss you, she said with a smile. Me too, Shizen-wan-chan, Naruto agreed. But I've only been gone a week. That's true, but it's still too quiet without you here, she said with a laugh. Naruto just laughed, and gave her a big smile. Shizen then noticed Aisane, and Nimue standing behind him. Naruto, who are the 2 women behind you? This is Nimue and Aisane, Naruto said, introducing the pair. I helped them on my mission, and I brought them to talk to Ka-san to see if we can help them get home. That is so you, Naruto, Shizen said knowingly. Be nice, she's having a bad day. Got it, he said, and headed toward the doors. He opened the door, and shouted, Hiksan. Tsunade jumped out of her chair, and looked at her son. Naruto, she said, and punched him across the room. Aisane and Nimue watched in bewilderment, as Naruto flew through a wall, and landed hard on the ground. Don't startle me like that. Naruto slowly got up, and walked over. Sorry Ka-san, he said with a smile. Tsunade smiled, and then noticed the girls. Naruto, why are there 2 girls with you? She questioned, staring at her son. If you get them pregnant, you're responsible for your actions. Aisane blushed, and Nimue stared at Tsunade, as if she was crazy. No! That is not what's going on, she reassured Tsunade. Naruto offered to bring us here, and see if you could help us get home. Oh, he did, Tsunade muttered, shaking her head. She turned to Naruto. So, how did you meet them? Naruto proceeds to give his mission report, while Tsunade listens intently. She looked at her son, and said, We can see what we can do, but in the meantime, it is your responsibility while they are in the village. Is that understood? Yes, Ka-san, he said with a smile. That's a good boy, she beamed, and looked at Nimue and Aisane. Welcome to Konoha. I am Tsunade Senju, Godiem Hokage. I am Aisane Kotetsu, Aisane said, with a small bow. Nimue Kurotsuchi, Nimue said, mirroring her friend. It is nice to meet you, Tsunade replied. So where are you 2 from? Aisane started to get nervous, wondering what they were going to tell her, but Nimue stepped up with their answer. We come from across the sea. We are here to see what your culture is like, and how we can find ways to help each other. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. She felt something was off with their story, but knew she could prove anything. In addition, it seemed that they were completely honest about wanting to learn about them. She decided to have Naruto with them at all times, and also to have a few Umbu follow them, as well. She smiled, and said, Welcome to Konohagakure. Thank you for having us, Aisane said gratefully. Tsunade's tone turned serious. While you are in our village, you are to stay with Naruto at all times, is that clear? Yes, ma'am, they replied in unison. Tsunade looked at Naruto. Take care of them. Yes, ma'am, he repeated, with a smile, as they headed out of her office. I have a feeling life is going to get a lot more interesting, she said to herself, reaching for a bottle of sake. Mayuri stood by his machine and waited for Nimue to check in. They were supposed to check in after the first day to report their progress, but it had been more than 3 days. At first, he chalked it up to Nimue being her usually stupid self, but he knew she wouldn't be this late. Activate their homing beacons, he ordered one of the researchers. After a few minutes, one of the researchers waved to Mayuri. Sir, we can't find their signals, he regretfully responded. What do you mean, we can't find their signals? Mayuri shouted. A quick scan of the screen stated that their signals were not found. This can't be good. Mayuri thought intently. Captain Mayuri stood in front of the other captains and explained what had happened to Nimue and Aisane. He was trying to play it off as an equipment malfunction, but it seemed some weren't buying the excuse. Stop trying to play it off, as it is nothing, Captain Hitsugaya shouted. We lost 2 lieutenants, and you're stating it was a simple equipment malfunction. That is what I am saying, Mayuri stated, as he looked at the small captain. It is nothing to worry about, and anyway if Nimue is lost I can always make another. What did you just say about your lieutenant? Captain Byakuya Kichiki said with a hint of anger in his voice. Disgraceful. I rather see it as upgrading to a better model, Mayuri stated. Byakuya looked at him in anger, and took a step forward only to be stopped by one of the other captains. Enough of this, Head Captain Yamamoto said, we will wait a few more days before sending someone to see what had happened to Lieutenant Kotetsu and Kurotsuchi. Dismissed. Naruto leads Nimue and Aisane through the streets of Konoha on their way to his place. I'm glad you guys are staying with me, Naruto said with a large smile. It would have been hard to find a hotel room with the Chunin exams coming up. Chunin exams? Nimue said with a confused look on her face. Naruto hit himself in the forehead. I so stupid, he muttered, making Aisane giggle. Sorry, I forgot you're not from around here. I explain once we get to my place. Nimue nodded, and they continued on their way. As they walked, Nimue noticed a girl with short pink hair storming over towards them. Naruto! She shouted, and grabbed him by his collar, and proceeded to shake him violently. You ruined my date with Sasuke. Do you know how long I've been waiting for that? Do you? Nimue watched in fascination, as the pink-haired girl proceeded to beat their caretaker to a bloody pulp. She stood over him panting, as he lay on the ground moaning in pain. That will teach you not to train near us, she said. Excuse me, Aisane said, getting the pink-haired girl's attention. I can understand you wanting to get back at him for ruining something very important, but we need him alive if you please. Oh, I am sorry, the girl said. My name is Sakura Haruno, Jonin of Konoha. I am Aisane Kotetsu, Aisane replied. We are new to the village, and Naruto was put in charge of our safekeeping. You are getting protected by him, Sakura said with a little surprise in her voice. If Naruto is protecting them, they must be important people, she thought to herself. Yes, we are, Nimue said. Sakura smiled, and said, You're in good hands? He is an idiot at times, and kinda dense, but you never find a better guy around. That great thing to know, Aisane said, knowing they were in good hands. Naruto smiled at this, and slowly got up off the ground. All his bruises and cuts had healed, and he was ready to go. Thanks, Sakura. I didn't know you care, Naruto said with a smile, only to have Sakura punch him across the street. Baka, Sakura said, and walked away. Naruto sat up and sighed, rubbing his head, trying to alleviate the pain. I really need to stop pissing her off. Aisane ran over to Naruto and leaned down to make sure he was all right. Was it wise to get her angry? Nimue said, as he stood up after Aisane looked him over. No matter what I do, I will always manage to piss her off, Naruto said with a sigh. Well, that is unfortunate, Nimue said. It's fine, Naruto replied, as he stood up. I bet you're hungry. Let's get you some food. Mayuri stood in front of the viewing screen scanning for Nimue and Aisane. No matter what he tried, he could not pinpoint where they were. He tried setting it to find high spiritual pressure, but the machine detected thousands of large spiritual pressures. He watched in amazement. The people of this world had a lot of power. He was about to do some more research on this when Head Captain Yamamoto walked in. "Have you had any progress on finding the lieutenants?" he asked. "I have not," Mayuri stated, "but I have found out something very interesting." "And what does that prayer tell?" Yamamoto said. "This world seems to have a lot of powerful people in it," Mayuri said. "When I tried to search for the lieutenant's spiritual pressure, I found thousands, maybe millions of very high spiritual pressures there. With that many powerful spirits, it is impossible to get a lock on them." "This is very troubling," Yamamoto said. "I want you to continue to monitor this world, and also keep up the search for the lieutenants." "Yes, Head Captain," Mayuri said, and went straight back to work. Naruto had led Nimue and Isen to a large house with 2 stories. He opened the door and said, "Welcome to my humble abode." "Do you live here?" Isen asked in awe. She had seen houses like this before, but she never expected for Naruto to live in one. "Of course," he said with a smile. "Where did you think I lived?" Isen turned red in embarrassment. "I guess I never thought about it." "It's fine," he said, as he walked through the hall towards the living room. Nimue looked around, and saw that the house was well furnished, and most of the walls were filled with pictures. She looked at some of them, and saw one with a small Naruto standing with a very old man, wearing a strange hat. As she continued to look at the pictures, she noticed that they were mostly Naruto, and other people, but none with him and his parents. She finally found one with a man looking like Naruto, and a very beautiful woman with red hair rubbing her belly. That must be his parent, Nimue thought, as she looked at the picture. Isen watched Nimue, and sat down on the couch. His home was very inviting. It seemed like a great place to raise a family. As they looked around the house, Naruto was in the kitchen making dinner. He had created 3 clones to help so he could get done quickly. He was making smoked salmon with rice and steamed vegetables. To him it was nice to have people over. Most of his friends were busy with their duties or their love lives. Hinata had gotten together with Kiba after Naruto told her that he didn't like her the way she liked him. She was sad, but soon found the happiness she deserved in Kiba's arms. Sasuke had told Sakura he loved her after Naruto had brought him back. After that, Naruto had just stopped caring if he would find love. To him it was his fate to be alone for the rest of his life. As he cooked, and thought about that, he quickly cheered himself up. "Can't dwell on it now," he said, and continued to cook. It was an hour later when the food was ready, and the table was set. Naruto made sure everything was ready before entering the living room. As he entered, he noticed Nimue standing by his bookshelf with a book on beginning chakra control in her hand, while Isen was sleeping on the couch. Naruto smiled at this, and walked towards Nimue. Nimue didn't notice him coming towards her. She was too absorbed in the book she was reading. It was telling her that the people in this world use a power called chakra, which is the combination of the physical and spiritual energies in their bodies. She was about to learn how to access this energy when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She jumped, and fell to the floor waiting for Mayuri to yell at her for not paying attention, but it never came. She then remembered where she was, and saw Naruto standing over her. "Sorry for startling you," he said, and offered her his hand. Nimue takes it, and he pulls her to her feet. "It's fine," she said, but Naruto noticed that she was hiding something. He knew that he shouldn't press her on it, but he would ask her later. "Well, okay," he said, and smiled. "Dinner is ready, and I'll wake Isen and meet you in the dining room." "That's fine," she answered, but stopped. "Where is the dining room?" Naruto smiled, and pointed towards a door on the far side of the wall. "Just through there." Nimue nodded, and headed towards the dining room. Naruto walked towards the couch, and leaned over Isen. He shook her lightly. Isen time to get up. Insane stirred, and blink, she saw a blurry form above her causing her to go into combat mode. She threw a punch into her attacker's stomach, and then got on top of them ready to strike. She got a good look at her attacker, and saw that it was Naruto. She leaned in close, and said, "I am so sorry." It was a reflex. Naruto blushed. She was so close to him, and he couldn't help to notice her beauty. "It's fine," he said, as he looked at her. "Are you hurt?" she asked him with worry in her voice. Naruto's blush turned even redder, as she leaned in closer. "I'm fine," He said he couldn't look at her without blushing. Can you get off me, please? Aisane finally noticed that she was straddling the blonde. She quickly got off him, and blushed in embarrassment. I am so sorry, she said, not looking at him. He looked at the blushing girl, and smiled. It's fine, he said, you were just startled by that all. Aisane looked at Naruto with a smile. He was a gentleman, and was going out to make sure she was comfortable. I'm just glad you're alright, Aisane said. Naruto smiled, and replied, it will take more than a punch to the gut to take me down. Aisane giggled at this, causing Naruto to laugh a little, as well. After a minute he regains his composure. Well, dinner is ready, so come on, let's eat. Ninu watched as Naruto and Aisane entered the room. She had entered the dining room, and waited for a moment before she heard a sound come from the other room. She watched the entire scene that happened between the blonde and the sliver. It was quite amusing. As they sat down to eat, she noticed the spread on the table. It looked like it could feed at least 5 people, and took more than an hour to make. She stared at the blonde, and wondered what he did to get it all done. Nimi looked at Naruto, as he smiled, and made small talk with Aisane about how the food was. She started to feel his spiritual pressure. At first it seemed very small, but then she noticed that he was suppressing it quite well, as if it was second nature. As she probed past it, she saw that he had a huge amount of spiritual pressure. It was as large as Ichigo Kurosaki's when he fought Asian, yet there was still more. What is he? She pondered, as she felt his power. She was pulled out of her musing when she noticed a voice calling her name. She looked, and saw Naruto calling her. Yes, she answered. Are you okay? He asked, concerned. Nimi looked at him confused. I am fine, she said. Why do you ask? Well, you haven't touched your food, he said, concerned. I was wondering if you were feeling well. She noticed this, and a tinge of red came across her face. Oh, sorry, I was thinking, she said, hoping he wouldn't scold her. Oh, that's okay, he said with a smile. I thought you were sick or something. She was shocked by his reaction, but she didn't show it. It seemed he was concerned about her health. She let a near unnoticeable smile come across her face. Thank you for your concern, she said, and started to eat. Naruto noticed her smile, and smiled back. No problem. He started, and they continued to eat. Nimi sat on her bed, and pondered what had transpired during the course of their expedition to this world. It seemed that the people here had very high spiritual pressures, but there was no signs of hollow activity, as of yet. What puzzled her most was the culture of the people. They seemed to be a mixture of the modern world, and the old ways like the Soul Society, but in an entirely different way. As she continued to ponder her thoughts, she didn't notice Insane walk in the room with only a large t-shirt on. Hey Nimiu, Aisane said, getting Nimia's attention. Yes? She asked, wondering what her partner wanted. Aisane sat down next to her, and sighed. It's been a weird couple of days, hasn't it? Nimiu thought about it for a moment, and agreed. It had been a weird couple of days. They have traveled to a new world that they knew nothing about, and they could be seen and touched by everyone here. They were captured by a group of bandits, and nearly raped, but were saved by their new blonde friend. Now they were staying in his house, and he was their bodyguard. Yes, it has been, she finally said, as she got all her thoughts in order. Aisane lied back, and stared at the ceiling. This world is a lot different from Soul Society. Yes, it is, Nimi said, and I can't wait to learn more about it. Aisane smiled, and thought of a certain blonde. I feel the same, she said, and got up, and headed towards her bed. Night, Nimiu. Sleep well, Aisane, Nimi said, and turned off the light, and got into her bed. The blankets covered her form, allowing her to fall asleep with dreams about a certain blonde. Naruto sat on his roof gathering sage chakra. He could feel Nimiu, and Aisane in the house, and everyone else in the village. As he sat there, he felt a familiar presence fill his head. Hi brat, Kyubi said inside of Naruto's head. Naruto sighed, and let go of the nature chakra he had gathered. Hey Kyubi, what's up? Oh, nothing, just wondering if you're going to mate with the two in the house, Kyubi said with a perverted grin. Ero Kitsune, Naruto replied, shaking his head. After the war, he and Kyubi had formed a somewhat strained friendship. Naruto knew if it wasn't for Kyubi he would have died when he was little, and Kyuubi knew without Naruto he would be sealed in a statue with his brother and sisters. So they put aside their differences and became friends. It worked at some points, and at others they wanted to kill each other, but they got past all that. Kyuubi rolled his eyes and replied, I know you want to. You haven't stopped looking at them all day, especially the tall one. I have not, Naruto said blushing. You can't fool me, brat, Kyuubi stated. I have been with you since you were born. I know you better than you do. Naruto sighed, knowing the fuzzball was right. So what? He said, trying to brush it off. Is it a crime to find someone attractive? Kyuubi laughed at this before answering, No, it's not. But not doing anything to get them in bed with you is. You're a pervert, you know that. Naruto started shaking his head. I can't believe I share with a perverted fuzzball, he thought to himself. Hey, I am not a pervert, Kyuubi stated. I am a super pervert. You did not just do that. Naruto said in shock. It's Ero Sennin all over again. Kyuubi laughed. Ero Kitsune, Naruto said, and got up and headed to bed, with Kyuubi laughing the entire way. The sun started to peak above the Hokage monument, and signaled for Naruto to get up and start his training. He pulled on a pair of black pants, and his crystal he got from his mother. He yawned and messed up his hair. He quickly headed out of the house and into the backyard, to his personal training grounds. He looked around and took in a breath of the morning air. He smiled to himself and formed his favorite hand sign and said, Let's get this started. Soon a large cloud of smoke filled the air. Naruto was now surrounded by over 150 clones of himself all ready to go. Okay guys, you know the drill. The original Naruto said, and a battle cry filled the air, and the battle was on. Nimue and Isen woke up to a loud explosion filling the air. They both got out of bed and stood ready for battle, but saw no one there. They looked around only to see something fly past their window. Nimue ran to the window and looked out. What she saw shocked her to the core. Naruto was fighting clones of himself, as it was the most normal thing in the world. Nimue, what is it? Isen wondered what was going on. Nimue moved from the window and said, Look. Isen looked, saw the Naruto battle royal, and was as shocked as Nimue. How is that possible? She stammered and looked at Nimue. I have no idea, but I plan to find out, she said, and stormed out of the room towards the battle. What she failed to notice was that she was only in her bra and panties. Isen ran after Nimue, wanting to stop her from heading outside. Nimue waited. She shouted, but she was too far away. Nimue headed out the back door and walked towards the battling Narutos. She stopped by one of the trees and watched the battle. There was one Naruto battling all the other ones, which Nimue thought was the original. The original Naruto was taking out clones left and right. He had set his limit at taijutsu and his futon justice. He quickly dodged an attack from his left and flashed 5 hand signs, futon, wind dragon bullet. He took in a huge breath and exhaled a large dragon made of wind. It tore through a lot of the clones, and Naruto took on a group to his left with a series of punches and kicks. He then jumped in the air and went through another series of hand signs, futon, wind blades. With a wave of his hand, a huge blade of wind tore through the rest of the clones. Naruto lands in a crouch, waiting to see if any more clones are left. After a few moments he stood up, ran his hand through his hair, and sighed. Need to get faster, he said to himself, as he stretched. Nimue watched this, and noticed that he was shirtless. She saw that it was well built, not overly like a bodybuilder, but like a martial artist. Nimue also noticed that he also had a lot of scars all over his torso, but the one that stood out was the one near his heart. It was the size of a fist. What happened to him for that type of scar to happen? Nimue thought. She noticed that he was walking her way, and stepped out from her hiding place, and said, Naruto, can I talk for a moment? Naruto looked up, and saw Nimue, but quickly turned away from her, blushing up a storm. Hi Nimue, he stammered, but in his mind he was thinking, why is she only in her bra and panties? Kyuubi on the other hand was smiling up a storm. You are such a lucky kid, take her now. Shut it Kyuubi, Naruto said to Kyuubi. He kept his eye on the ground and said, Hi Nimue, how are you doing today? Nimue said, but noticed something. Naruto wasn't looking at her. Am I unattractive? She thought. Naruto, is there a reason why you are not looking at me? Naruto didn't answer for a moment before he said, Nimue, aren't you forgetting something? Nimue thought for a moment then said, No, I am not. Naruto turned his head, and once again got an eyeful of Nimue's body. She was beautiful. She was slender with all the right curves in the right places. Are you sure? Naruto said with emphasis. Nimue thought for a moment before she felt a cold draft against her skin. She looked down at herself, and saw she was only in her bra and panties. Excuse me for a moment, Nimue said, turning red, and ran inside. Aisane was heading outside to get Nimue when she ran past, as fast as possible. Aisane sighed. I guess she finally noticed, she said, and noticed Naruto outside shirtless. She blushed, and took a few moments to look over the blonde. They don't make them like that anymore, she thought to herself with a blush. Nimue and Aisane sat at the table eating breakfast, and Naruto was cooking. After the incident earlier that morning, every time Naruto looked at Nimue he blushed. Aisane found this amusing, while Nimue wondered why he kept blushing. She finished her meal, and brought the plate over to Naruto. Naruto noticed her, and blushed, taking the plate from her. Thank you for the meal, she said. No problem, Naruto replied with a blush. She nodded, and walked back into the living room, and sat down on the couch. She was still a little embarrassed about what had happened, but was happy Naruto treated her with respect. Back home Mayuri would yell at her, and harm her for being a dumb girl. It was nice to be treated nicely, and not like an object that needs fixing. As she sat there she wondered how Naruto created the clones earlier. She knew it had to deal with the chakra she read about the other night, but she wanted to learn more. How does it work? How do they control it? And what can they do with it? Also, if all the people in the knew how to use chakra, and if she could learn how to use it. Soon Aisane joined her on the couch, and they waited for Naruto to finish cleaning up. So what are our plans for today? Aisane asked Nimue, as they sat there. Nimue thought for a moment then replied, I was going to ask Naruto to show us how his powers work. Yeah, it would be great to learn how he did that, Aisane said, remembering the clones he was fighting. Nimue nodded, and replied yes, it would be very informative, and maybe we can learn how to use it, as well. Aisane looked at Nimue with a confused look. You think we can learn how to do that as well? I don't know, but what I read last night says they use a power called chakra, Nimue said. Chakra? Aisane asked. Nimue was about to answer when they heard a voice behind them say, Chakra is the combination of the physical and spiritual energies in our bodies. It is essential to live, and is also the power behind our justice. Justice? Nimue asked, confused. Naruto remembered that they weren't from there, and didn't understand anything he was talking about. Okay, let me start from the beginning, he said, getting their attention. He walked to a chair in front of the couch. We are here in the elemental nations. We are broken up into many different lands, and are ruled by the daimyo of each land. There are the samurai forces that the daimyo commands, and there are the shinobi. Shinobi? Nimue asked. Yes, shinobi, Naruto said. They are basically assassins, warriors, or anything we are hired for. You're a shinobi? Nimue asked. Yeah, all my life, he said with a smile. Show me, Nimue said, leaning in close to Naruto. Naruto blushed, and said sure, but first I think a trip to the library would help you guys understand what I will show you better. Nimue nodded, and grabbed Naruto's hand, pulling him out of his chair, and towards the door, with Aisane close behind. Nimue sat in the midst of several tall stacks of books. Once they had arrived at the library, Nimue had proceeded to empty the shelves of all the books pertaining to the history of the elemental nations and the shinobi. She tried to gain access to books on chakra and justice, but was denied because they were for registered shinobi only. Therefore, she proceeded to read all she could about the land. She learned of the 5 major shinobi villages. There was the village hidden in the mist, clouds, rock, sand, and leaves. She learned of the 3 of the 4 great shinobi wars. This was only due to the fact that the 4th had ended only a few short years ago. Naruto watched in awe as Nimue finished book after book. He had heard of fast readers, but this was just insane. Aisane, on the other hand, was enjoying a light romance novel that she had found in the fiction section. It was about a leaf ninja who had been kidnapped, and the lengths her love would go to save her. She sighed to herself, and wished she had someone like that, but alas, no one in the Soul Society matched her expectations. As she read, she noticed a tall ninja with gravity-defying silver hair walk past with a small blue book in his hand. Every so often he would giggle perversely. She wondered what the big deal was about the book he held. She had noticed several men and women reading it, and if he was reading while walking, it must be good. She got up and headed towards the shelves, determined to find a copy. Naruto watched the two as they read and smiled. He was glad that they were having a good time, but he was bored. He pulled out a scroll and unsealed a pen and black notebook. He made sure that no one was near him as he proceeded to write. It was a known fact that Naruto had continued the Ika series in Jiraiya's honor. He had made it less smut and more story-driven. He still included the occasional explicit sex scene, but not as many as his old master. Most of his ideas came from talking with Kyubi. The only stipulation that was placed on him by Tsunade was that if he ever peeked in on the women's bath, he would end up 6 feet under. He is currently working on his latest edition, Ika, Desert Nights. It was rumored that this would be the best one yet. As he wrote, he didn't notice his old sensei, so Kakashi walked over to him. "Hey Naruto," Kakashi greeted, causing Naruto to jump and quickly close his notebook. He turned around and saw Kakashi standing over him. "Hi Kakashi-sensei, how have you been?" Kakashi smiled and giggled like a pervert. "I've been good, just enjoying your last edition," he said with a wicked grin. Naruto rolled his eyes. "I can see that," he stated, and proceeded to reseal his notebook. Kakashi noticed this, and a glint came to his eye. "Is that the last draft for the new Ika?" he asked sweetly. Naruto gave Kakashi a dirty look. "No, but just a little peek," Kakashi said, trying to get the scroll, but Naruto quickly put it in a seal on his jacket. "No," Naruto said again. "Last time I let you read it beforehand, I didn't get it back at all. I had to track you down and pry it from your hand, remember?" Kakashi smiled and rubbed the back of his head nervously. "Sorry?" he mumbled, hoping to earn some Ika points, but Naruto wasn't budging. "Sorry Kakashi-sensei, you have to wait for it like everyone else," Naruto said, rising to his feet. Kakashi sighed and walked away, disappointed that his plan failed. While this little conversation had been going on, Ine tried to find a copy of the small blue book she had seen, but couldn't find a copy on the shelves. She then noticed a small orange book with the same title, and eagerly picked it up. She walked back over to the table Nimi was sitting at, and took the seat across from here. She opened the book, and started reading. At first she blushed a bit, but the further she read the more red she turned. She read about the 5th chapter before snapping the book shut. She was as red as a beet. Who would write such smut, especially in such great detail, she thought, as she set the book down. Nimi looked up from her reading at the sound of Ine slamming the orange book shut. Nimi wondered what was in the book to make Ine turn such a dark shade of red. Nimi closed her book and reached for the orange one, but Ine snatched it from her. "This is not a good read," she stammered. Nimi looked at her with confusion on her face, but quickly shrugged it off and went back to her book. Ine walked quickly over to the help desk and turned in the book to the librarian. The librarian saw the expression on Ine's face and the copy of the Ika in her hand. She took pity on the poor girl and took the book away from here. "This is from the old series," the librarian explained. "Only old men and perverts read this one." She pulled out a blue-covered book and handed it to Ine. "These are the ones you want to read. The new author has made it into a respectable series. Enjoy." Ine took the book and looked at it curiously. The title was Ika, Lonely Nights. She opened the book and read the first page, expecting it to be a copy of the orange book. Much to her surprise, she was pulled into the story. The librarian watched with a smile as Ine walked back to read the small blue book in comfort. She then noticed Naruto walking around the shelves, pulled out her own copy of the blue book, and walked over to him. "Excuse me," she whispered, getting his attention. She held out the book and a pen. Can you please sign this for me? Naruto smiled. Sure, I'd love to. Who should I make it out to? Asa Yamada, Asa said, her face becoming red. Naruto smiled and opened the book. Taking the pen, he wrote, To Asa, with love, Naruto Uzumaki. He handed back the book and pen and watched as her face lit up. Thank you, she said, leaning in close. If you ever have writer's block, I would love to help you out. Naruto blinked. I'll keep that in mind. Kyubi had a huge smile on his face. Take her now, you know you want to. Naruto blushed. Shut up, Erokitsun. Kyubi just laughed at him and left him alone. Mimiya had just finished her last book and sat up. She proceeded to take all the books back to their places on the shelves. She walked over to Isane and looked over her shoulder. Isane, being so absorbed in her book, failed to notice Nimue. They both got to a certain part of the book, the blood rushing to their faces. Can a woman really bend like that? Nimue asked, startling Isane. Isane quickly closed the book and stared up at Nimue a little peeved. Don't scare me like that, she stated, as she got up out of her chair, the blue book still in hand. I'm sorry if I have startled you, Nimue said. It's just that you were so absorbed in that book I was wondering what was going on. Also, it was a fair question. Can we really bend like that? Isane blushed at what Nimue was implying. I don't know, you'd have to try it to know. Nimue looked at Naruto, with a tint of red in her face. Maybe someday I will, she responded quietly. She saw the glance that Nimue gave Naruto, and blushed, as well. Maybe someday, Isane said. Naruto stood to the side, and looked over at Nimue and Isane. He saw them glance at him, and noticed the blush on their faces. He wondered what was going on with them, but Kyubi was smiling, and giggling perversely. The kid is going to have a good time if he plays his cards right, Kyubi thought, grinning. Mayuri stood in front of the screen, his eyes filled with frustration. He couldn't find them at all. Everything he had tried had no effect. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack, inside of another haystack, locked in a safe in the most secure place on earth. Where could those blasted females be? He muttered to himself. While Mayuri was worrying about how to find the lieutenants, most of the other Soul Reapers were also worried for their safety. Most knew of their mission to this new world, but it had been over 2 weeks since they had last checked in, and many were getting worried that something terrible had happened. Captain Unohana was worried for both lieutenants, but knew they could take care of themselves, but without recent contact, she feared the worst. Head Captain Yamamoto sat at his desk wondering what he was going to do about his 2 missing lieutenants. He knew Mayuri was trying his best to find them, but he knew he wasn't enough. He needed to get the best scientific mind on this. Turning to his lieutenant, Get me Kisuke Urahara. Naruto leads Nimue and Isane towards the Hokage tower. After the library, Nimue had asked if she could speak to the Hokage about something. Naruto was more than happy to oblige. As they walked, they couldn't help but marvel at the peaceful atmosphere of the village. From what Nimue had learned from books, this place was home to some of the most powerful people in this world. Most had already died, but to have that kind of strength was amazing. What she had read about the Shodai Hokage, Hashirama Senju, was that he could literally create a forest with his chakra. If this world was filled with people like that, even the captains would have trouble fighting them. They soon reached the Hokage tower, and went inside. Shizen saw them, and ushered them in. Swanda sat at her desk going through her paperwork with a frown on her face. She noticed the group walk in, and was happy for a distraction from the paperwork. Hello everyone, she said, welcoming. We are doing well, thank you for asking, Isane replied. That is great. How is the village treating you? Swanda asked. Nimue was the first to speak up. It has been very pleasant. It is nice to have some peace. So, where you're from, there is always strife? Swanda asked. Nimue, not wanting to give too much away, replied yes, but not in the way you think. It's mostly disagreements between members of the ruling council. Tsunade sighed, knowing exactly what that is like. It is quite annoying, isn't it? Yes, Nimue replied with a sigh. So, what brings you to my fine office? Tsunade asked, wanting to get down to business. Nimue looked at her for a moment before speaking. I was wondering if it is possible for us to learn to use chakra. Tsunade tilted her head to one side. I really don't know. We would have to check your chakra coils to see. Why is that? Isen asked. Most of the time people start to learn to use chakra at a young age. Most adults who try to use it cannot because their chakra coils seal off from lack of use, Tsunade explained. But since you are not from here, it may be possible for you to use chakra. Nemia smiled, hopefully. If they could learn to use this chakra, they could use it to teach the other Shinigami, and be ready for any threats. Thank you for the help, Tsunade smiled. It's not a problem, but I would like to know if you have anything to teach us in return. What do you mean? Nemia asked, getting a little nervous. Since you are from a faraway land, there must be some foreign knowledge that you can teach us, Tsunade stated, looking Nemia directly in the eyes. It seems only fair, if we are to teach you how to use chakra. Nemia was silent for a moment. May I have a private word outside with Isen, before I give you our answer? Nemia asked. She needed Isen's approval in her decision. She didn't want to reveal any of the techniques, but if they didn't, they would lose the opportunity to learn about this chakra. That is fine, Tsunade replied. Thank you, Nemia said, and led Isen out of the office. Isen looked at Nemia with worry. What are we going to do? We can't reveal any of our techniques to them. We will be executed if the Seratai finds out. I don't know, Nemia said. But we need to learn about this chakra, and see if we can use it. There are risks, but maybe we can bargain with her. Isen thought for a moment. We can say that we will only teach one person, she offered. That might work, Nemia replied. They can't use our techniques anyway. We will have to see? Isen said. Also, what if we can't use this chakra after all? What should we do then? Nemia thought for a moment before answering. Just leave that to me. Isen nodded, and they headed back into the office where Naruto and Swanda were waiting. Tsunade sat at her desk, waiting for their answer, hoping they would agree. Nemia stepped forward. We are willing to teach you our technique, but we have a few stipulations. Tsunade was intrigued. Name them, she said in true negotiator fashion. Nemia was relieved at this response. First, we are willing to teach you our technique if we're able to use chakra. Tsunade thought for a moment before answering. Sounds fair. Any others? Also, we will only teach in person, Isen said. Tsunade stared at them. Why only one person? She asked. We want to see if they are able to learn our techniques. If we can't learn to use chakra, then maybe you can't learn our techniques, Nemia said. That is very true, Tsunade replied, as she pondered. I will do it, if you let me choose the one you train. Nemia looked at Tsunade, and frowned a bit. She was hoping that they got to choose, but she could feel that Tsunade wouldn't compromise further. We find these terms agreeable, Nemia said, as Tsunade smiled. It seems we have a deal, Swanda said with a smile. Now the person you are going to train is Naruto. Nemia and Isen sighed in relief. They didn't want to teach someone they didn't know. Tsunade smiled. I figured you would approve of my choice. I presumed that you wouldn't like teaching someone you hardly know, so you're going to train this knucklehead here. Thank you, Hokage, Nemia said with a bow. Isen did the same. It's fine, Tsunade said. Now let's go see if the coils are any good, shall we? Urahara sat at his desk. He had just received hell butterflies from the Soul Society. It seemed that Mayuri had discovered a new world, separate from their own, and had sent 2 lieutenants to investigate. Unfortunately, they had yet to contact the Soul Society, and it had been 2 weeks since their departure. Head Captain Yamamoto had asked him to look over Mayuri's design, and see if he could find the lieutenants, and possibly help with research. This intrigued him. With the discovery of this world, there was a whole new source of knowledge that he could obtain, and teach to others. He smiled to himself, as he decided to help. Hey, Tezai, he called, and a large masculine man entered the room. Yes, Kisuk, get my tools. We've got a little project to build, Urahara said with a smile. Tezai nodded, and went to the training area. As he headed out of his office, he saw a young girl with long orange hair walk through his shop door. Sorry I'm late, everyone, Orihime called with a large smile on her face. After the winter war, she had started to work at Urahara's candy shop. The pay was okay, but she was also training her powers so she could get stronger. She was glad she had friends that protected her with all their might, but she wanted to stop being a burden. This motivated her to train hard. The result was that she had gotten better at using her shields. She walked into the back and put on her work apron. This showed off her impressive figure. She smiled at everyone and set to work. Urahara watched her work and smiled. "Hey Orihime," Urahara called, getting her attention. "Yes, Mr. Urahara? I'm going to need your help with something in the training area," he said. "It seems that the Soul Society needs my help." Orihime was ecstatic. She was going to be able to help her friends. "I'll be right there." She jumped up so fast she tripped over her feet, falling down. "Ow, why? Are you all right?" Urahara said, as Orihime rubbed her backside in pain. "Yeah, I'm fine," she replied, getting up. "You know, you're still a klutz," Jinta said, only to get hit in the head by Urahara. "It's not nice to be mean to girls," he said, as Jinta rubbed his head, trying to alleviate the pain. "I'm sorry," Jinta mumbled, and then ran out to the front of the shop. Orihime sighed. She had wanted to tell him that it was okay, but he ran away a little too fast. She turned to Urahara. "Shall we get started?" He simply nodded, and they went to the secret training ground to start work on the project. Nimue sat on a hospital bed waiting for the medic to come and check her out. After they had finished talking to the Hokage, they were sent straight to the hospital to have their chakra coils checked. Eine was in another room changing into her hospital gown while Nimue waited to be seen. She wondered who would come in and check them. Soon the door opened, and a tall woman with dark blue hair and purple eyes walked in. What fascinated Nimue the most was the fact that there were no pupils in her eyes. "Hello, I am Hinata Hyuga. I will be your medic today." "Nimue Kurotsuchi," Nimue replied. "It's nice to meet you." "Likewise," Hinata said with a smile. "So, are you ready for your examination?" "Yes," Nimue said with determination. Hinata smiled and nodded. "Okay then, lie down for me, and I will start the procedure," Nimue complied. Hinata walked to her side and smiled. "This won't hurt a bit," she said, and then whispered, "Byakugan." Nimue watched, as veins suddenly pulsed around Hinata's eyes. She wondered what this allowed her to see. While Nimue pondered this, Hinata checked her chakra coils. As she looked, she saw that they were still intact, and could be put to use as soon as someone opened up to her. The reason it seemed that her coils were usable was she had been using the spiritual power without the physical. This preserved the coils, allowing them to be opened slowly. It would take a while for her to do any just due to the fact she needs to build her reserves. "It seems you will be able to use chakra after all," Hinata said with a smile. Nimue was surprised. She thought that she had been living off false hope. "I am going to open your points so your chakra will start to flow." Nimue nodded, and Hinata proceeded to open her 361 Tenketsu points. As Hinata slowly opened each point, she could feel the power start to flow. It made her feel better than she had in years. She felt as if she could take on a captain and not break a sweat. Soon Hinata was done, and Nimue's chakra was flowing. "All done," Hinata said with a smile. Nimue quickly sat up, but Hinata stopped her. "Take it easy, it will take you a while for your body to adjust to having chakra, so you're going to rest for now." Nimue started to speak, but was cut off by Hinata. "No buts," Hinata ordered. "You need to let your body adjust or you won't be able to use chakra at all." Nimue nodded. "At least I can start learning soon," she thought. As she was thinking, Hinata had started opening Aisene's tenacious points. Aisane could feel the power in her body, and couldn't wait to learn, but she was going to have to wait till they were released from the hospital first. Naruto walked into Nimue and Aisene's room, holding a few bowls of ramen in his hands. "Hey guys, how are you feeling?" he asked, as he slowly set down the food. "I feel powerful," Nimue said. "I feel as if I can take on anything." "I was the same when I started to use chakra," Naruto said, as he sat down next to her bed. "It's a great feeling, and it will only get better." "I am looking forward to it," Nimue said. Naruto smiled. "I'm glad. We're going to have a lot of fun training each other." "Training?" Nimue asked. "Yeah, I am the one who's going to train you to use your chakra." "I am glad," Nimue said with a nearly unnoticeable smile. "That's good," Naruto said, noting her subtle joy. "But for now, let's get some food for you guys." He went over to the bowls of ramen and gave one to each girl. "Eat up, it's the food of the gods." "What is it?" Isen asked. Ramen, of course, Naruto said with a smile. Nemea was the first to start eating. She had to admit this was very good. Most of the time she had instant ramen, but this ramen was handmade, making it a lot better. Soon they set into a comfortable silence. The only sound that could be heard was the slurp of noodles. Soon everyone had finished eating, and Naruto proceeded to collect the now empty bowls. Isen couldn't help but smile. Ever since they had met, he had been nothing but helpful and nice. He didn't try to take advantage of them in their weakened state, and he promised to help them get home. Overall, he was a great guy, one that only showed up once in a blue moon. Now he was keeping them company while they rested from getting their chakra running. Isen turned to Naruto. So, now that we have a moment of peace, tell me about yourself. Naruto grinned. Okay, I am Naruto Uzumaki. I am 20 years old, and I am Jonin from Konoha. I like ramen, training, pulling pranks, writing, and reading. I dislike traitors, cowards, perverts, rapists, and guys who treat women as objects, both Nimue and Isen blushed at his bluntness. I enjoy gardening, learning new justice, and my dream is to become the next Hokage. Wow, that is a lofty goal, Isen said. Yeah, but I can do it, he said with a smile. I never break my promises. That's a good trait to have, Isen said. Really? Most people think that it makes me an idiot, he sighed. Well, they are idiots, Nimue said. Naruto smiled. Thanks, it means a lot to me. He then looked at them. So, now you know about me, can you tell me about yourselves? Nimue looked at Naruto. My name is Nimue Kurotsuchi, 21 years old, and a researcher. I like research, reading, and learning. I dislike onions, hurtful people, she thought of her father, and sighed, and people who treat women with disrespect. I like to conduct research, and learn about new things. You're a researcher, Naruto said with a smile. I guess that it is to be expected. After all, you were sent here to research. He laughed a little, and Nimue gave him an odd look. Sorry, bad joke. It is fine, Nimue said. Naruto smiled, then looked at Isen. It was your turn. I am Isen Kotetsu. I am 22 years old, and I am also a researcher and medic, Isen said, getting a smile from Naruto. I like reading, helping people, my sister, and my friends. I dislike traitors, cowards, rapists, and men who disrespect women. I like to learn new healing techniques, helping my friends, and hanging out with my sister. That's cool, Naruto said with a smile. What's your sister like? Well, she is very excitable. She likes to jump into things without thinking, Isen said with a sigh. But she is a very loyal person who would never leave a friend behind. She sounds like a fun person, Naruto said with a smile. Do you have any siblings? Isen asked, only to see Naruto's expression change. I am an orphan, he said sadly. I never knew who my parents were till a few years back. I am so sorry, I didn't mean to bring it up, Isen said regrettably. Naruto gave her a friendly smile. It's fine, he stated. I have precious people that I love, so I'm never alone. Isen looked him in the eye, and could see that he was telling the truth, but was also hiding a deep feeling of loneliness. She didn't want to press him on it. I am glad, she said with a smile, but in her mind she wondered what could cause someone to have those eyes. He noticed the time, and sighed. I'd better be off. I've got to get stuff ready for your training tomorrow. See you later, have a good night, Isen said with a wave. Have a good day, Nimue said. Naruto waved back to them before heading out of the room. After he had left, Nimue looked at Isen. It seems that our host has had a hard life, she said curiously. It seems that way, Isen replied. But he seems to be stronger for it. That is true, Nimue said. He is truly different. Isen just nodded and sighed. She laid her head down on her pillow, and slowly drifted off to sleep. Nimue watched this, and sighed. She saw a notepad on the table along with a pen. She picked up said items, and began to record what had happened up to that point. As she wrote, her thoughts went back to the blonde. She could see that he was someone who had seen horror that could cripple another person, yet he was still going strong. He was cheery and excitable. He was never sad for long from what she had seen. She remembered seeing him train, shirtless, and blushed. Maybe, just maybe, she had found someone she could confide in too. Mayuri stood outside of Urahara's shop with a frown on his face. He didn't need this man's help. He could figure out how to find the lieutenants on his own, but alas, the head captain had ordered for him to work with Urahara. He was not alone in his venture to the living world. He was accompanied by a young woman with black hair that was pinned up in the back. She wore a pair of glasses that gave her the sexy librarian look. This was Nanao Ic, lieutenant of Squad 8. The head captain had ordered her to accompany Captain Kurotsuchi, because he wanted some to watch him. She stood by the clone-looking captain, and sighed. She wasn't glad to be assigned this mission knowing that none of the paperwork would get done without her there. But orders were orders. Why do we need this idiot's help? Mayuri grumbled, as they walked into the shop. Nanao looked at him with annoyance. The head captain thinks you need help in finding them, so he asks Urahara. Suck it up, and deal with it. I would rather just create 2 new lieutenants. It would be much faster, and could prove useful, Mayuri said with a wicked smile. Nanao looked at Mayuri, and slowly took off her glasses. Mayuri recoiled away from her gaze. You will follow the orders given to you, and not mention that idea again, she said, as she got a small nod from Mayuri. Good. She put her glasses back on, and walked towards the back of the store. Nimue and Isen were released from the hospital the next day. Naruto was waiting for them at the front desk with a smile on his face. Let's get going, you two. We have places to go, and things to do. Where are we going? Isen asked him, as they left the hospital. We are heading to the shinobi outfitters so we can get you guys outfitted for training, he explained, leading them down the street. But I thought we were only going to learn how to use chakra, Nimue asked. Yeah, you are, Naruto said, as they merged with the crowd. But if you're learning to use chakra, you have to learn other shinobi skills as well. I see, Nimue said, wondering what else they were going to learn. By the time you're done training, you will be able to give a jonin a run for his money. Believe it, he said, as they walked. Nimue and Isen followed, wondering what the day had in store for them. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.